Hi everyone, it's Michael, and it is time for another Bloom profile video. Now this is only the second ever Bloom profile video I've ever done, because as I mentioned in the first one, which I will link below, I only ever film the blooms once I've gotten them to rebloom. I feel like it would be cheating for me to purchase an orchid and then show you the blooms and talk about all of their qualities if I hadn't experienced it or learned them. So that's kind of the premise of the Bloom profile. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with this particular orchid, and that is number 8 in my collection, my Banfieldara Gilded Tower Mystic Maze. And you guys, it's so pretty. And I was so anxious that this was not actually going to fully bloom. I thought it was going to bud blast when I moved. Oh, look at it, just catching the light just so beautifully right there. But it didn't. I mean, it bud blasted to right here at the bottom when I moved. And because I was being careless, I knocked another one off. Now, let's talk a little bit about its adaptation. So I purchased this orchid specifically on May 18th of 2017. Now, it had a very slow transition to semi-hydroponics. It did not like it. It created a lot of mold. It really resisted it for a long time. But bear in mind, this is number 8 in my collection. This one was around when I was still heavily in my monthly disinfecting with Physan phase. So this one really endured a lot of abuse from me when I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm so thankful that it's still here with me, because by all logic, it shouldn't be. But it really just triumphed through. So I think it would have had a much faster adaptation to semi-hydro had I just left it alone. In terms of when the spike appeared, the spike started to poke its head through on February 16th, it started to bloom on the 8th of April. So that was just about a month and a half, is that right? Maybe almost 2 months, in terms of waiting for it to fully mature. But I will say that the process of moving from Colorado to California stunted it, because it was very close to blooming right when I packed it up. But as soon as it got here, I think it just kind of panicked. It didn't know what was going on. It dropped 2 of its buds. So I think it might have actually bloomed faster had I just left it. So it's not a clear snapshot of exactly how long it takes for them to bloom once they go into spike. But for me, that was the timeline from, again, February 16th all the way through April 8th. Now, I will put, as always, the full durations of the blooms below. I will put, after this video is posted, of course, when it drops its last bloom, so you'll have a snapshot of exactly how long the blooms will last. It's probably going to be somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks. We'll see. In terms of the history and background of this plant, it's kind of interesting. It is a cross between an Ada orchid, a Brassia orchid, and an Odontoglossum orchid. So when I purchased it, this was classified as a Banfieldara. And I will forever know it as such, because once that's in my head, that's just its name. Leave me alone. Okay, I'm not good at these things. But now it is categorized as a Bracido Stelle. I always want to say that like I'm an Italian pizza maker. I'm like, Bracido Stelle, but that's like probably not how you say it. But the reason it changed names was the Odontoglossum lineage that it had. It was reclassified as something else, and then the Ada was reclassified as something else. So that being said, it is now reclassified, but it will forever and always be a Banfieldara to me. In terms of the growth habits of this plant, the orchid wants to grow up and out of its pot. So each new pseudobulb it produces seems to go a little bit higher and higher in elevation. Now the plant will typically grow to 14 to 18 inches tall, and flower spikes are produced in between the innermost leaf and the newest pseudobulb. So each pseudobulb can produce 1 to 2 new inflorescences, but each flower spike can produce 10 to 15 flowers. In terms of the coloration of the flowers, the sepals and petals are this beautiful yellow and gold with brown spotting. And the lip or the labellum is this yellow-red. But to me, when I look closely and long enough at the brown patches, they kind of look like a deep maroon to me. So in my head, I kind of like to think that it's like a shade of purple. Justin always refers to it as purple too, so maybe I'm not crazy. In terms of the scent, there really is no scent whatsoever. Maybe I'm just weird, but anytime I smell a no fragrance orchid, if I get my nose close enough to it, I still feel like I smell something. It's not sweetness, it's not a floral scent, it's just a general freshness. So it doesn't have any specific scent, but to me I can still smell that it's a flower and not regular air, if that makes any sense. So how often do these bloom? Well, this one is blooming, given the timeline of when I purchased it to now, it's bloomed slightly more than once a year. So maybe every 11 months is probably a good bet. But as this gains momentum, and maybe if I'm ever in one place long enough for this to really get going, it may potentially give me more blooms than that even. And that frequency is liable to change, especially because it had such a rough adaptation as a product of my own actions. So I think when you factor in the adaptation, it might bloom a lot more frequently. So that's pretty much it, you guys. I love these videos because this is what we work so hard for. Of course, it's the process that really enriches us and makes us better people and teaches us patience and all of these wonderful things. But when these beautiful plants start to bloom and you've worked so hard to learn their temperamental nature and give them what they need, the sensation of self-efficacy is just so incredible. You feel so good about yourself and you feel so happy. And I'll show you right now where I have these orchids placed. I have these 3 shelves where I'm just kind of spotlighting my orchids in bloom. And every single night when I walk upstairs, I just get to stare at them and I get to spend time with them, and they just bring me the most impactful and profound joy. I just hope that you guys are feeling at least some fraction of the joy that I'm feeling getting to share these with you. In any case, thank you guys so much for choosing to spend your time with me. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. Don't forget to click subscribe and have a beautiful rest of your day. Mwah! Bye, guys.